Hey Green Chatters, welcome to another episode here on the Green Living Chat podcast. My name is David Ewusi-Mensah, your host, and this is a conversation with Matthieu Mehuys, who is a regenerative landscape architect. Yep, something we do not hear all the time. So we had an interesting conversation on sustainability goes way beyond just doing less harm. And I cannot wait for you to get into this conversation. So see you on the other side of this conversation. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Green Living Chat podcast, Matthieu. It's been a journey of trying to get to know you, but I'm super excited to get to dive into your work. So yeah, welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be on your podcast. It's already a pleasure that we were able to meet in Costa Rica. That was super nice to see the work you're doing. So I'm very excited about this.
Now that you mentioned that, actually, that almost never happens. We started a show since 2020, I think latter part of 2020. I haven't met a lot of, probably about 80% of the guests that have been on the show. I hardly meet guests. So it was really exciting to meet you even before the show and get to know you personally and stuff like that. So it's exciting. Yes. Let's get it started. Yeah. Matthieu, what brings you happiness?
Oh, that's a good question. So let me answer that by giving you my backstory. I grew up on a family farm, right? My brother and my father are farmers, and my first memory, or the thing that I still remember the best, is that I found it so astonishing that if we have a tiny little seed and we put that in the soil, and then it can grow into a plant that we can eat, harvest, or in some cases it can grow into an oak tree. I was mind blown by that, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. And so I grew up on the farm environment, and I told my parents, like, hey, I want to start growing my own food. Like on our farm at the time, my mom had her own job. She was in hospitality. My dad was running the farm, and he was focusing on cash crops and cattle. So we weren't doing any vegetable growing at all. So I said, I want to start my own vegetable garden. That was around the age of 5. And so after some nagging and after like my parents say, no, we don't have time for that, I kept persisting. They said, okay, here's a little corner in the garden. Here are some seeds. I started out with growing radishes. And even for the listeners, if you ever want to start growing your own food, start with radishes. It's like the easiest thing ever. You buy a few seeds, put them in the soil. A couple of weeks later, you have radishes. And this was like my first moment of happiness. And until today, the experience of growing your own food and then just harvesting it and having a beautiful meal with the things that you, together with nature, have grown is something that really makes me very happy. And that was like the first time in my life where I felt, wow, this is amazing. From that experience, I can give you my whole backstory as we're starting.
Right.
But then I thought like, okay, this vegetable gardening is super easy. Like I put seeds in the ground and I can harvest them. And radishes is the easiest one. I started with, for some reason, I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, now I'm going to get more seeds. So I asked my dad, 5-year-old, can I get more seeds? So we get these small packages. And I got like lettuce, spinach, tomatoes, carrots. Like I got a bunch of seeds because my dad was like, oh, he's really serious about it. Yeah. So let's just give him that. And then I prepared my soil and I put seeds everywhere in my garden. Wow. And then I thought, okay, I'll just come back in a few weeks and my garden is going to be full of lush vegetables and everything. And I come back a couple of weeks later. You probably guess what happened next. But my garden was completely overgrown by weeds. Ouch. That were taller than myself. Imagine a 5-year-old, rich soil in Belgium. It's like a super hard clay soil, but it's full of minerals and nutrients. And I was devastated. So after my biggest moment of happiness, I had my biggest moment of failure in a couple of months. And I was confused, like, why is nature not helping me? Why is it so hard to do this? And ever since that moment, it took a lot more years, but I've always wanted to understand how things work. Yeah. Like even my sister, they had these small toys, like a small washing machine. It was like electric with batteries. And I had to break it open to understand how does this thing turn. Yep. I'm always curious to know how things work. I wasn't able to put the machine together, so they were very angry at me. But at least I understood, like, oh, this is how it works. I continued in my life. I studied modern languages and economics, and then I said, okay, I'm done with studying theory, I want to go back to my roots. And I thought, how can I do that? Okay, garden design. So I started with a bachelor in landscape and garden design in Belgium. Then I did a master degrees in Germany, Munich, where I was like, I really want to do bigger projects, have bigger impact. And then I got into the 9-to-5 thing.
Yeah.
There I became depressed. Like I did it for 2 years.
Ouch.
I'm very happy that I did it because it was in Germany, like it was engineer level.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot, like still up until today, the way I manage my projects is from what I learned in Germany. Like they're very strict.
Yeah.
So that was a good experience, but doing the 9-to-5 and being in like super hard bureaucracy,
Right.
it wasn't what I signed up for. I wanted to design, I wanted to create. So I said, okay, I'm going to quit my job, all the money I had saved, and I'm going to travel the world. I took my backpack, packed my stuff, and I said, I'm going to discover projects around the world that are doing good for the planet and that are interesting, that are beautiful. So I went to a bunch of eco resorts, visited regenerative farms, organic farms. I volunteered. I was sleeping in a hammock in Colombia just for months to help, like volunteering.
Right.
I did a bunch of stuff. I went to Southeast Asia, South Africa, actually in Saudi Arabia too. Then I had a more like a job there. But even that whole traveling, I was doing like a freelance job, so I could self-sustain myself. And that was a really cool experience, and I got to see a lot of things. Because, you know, you and me, we probably both grew up with the inconvenient truth by Al Gore, thinking like, oh, the planet is completely destroyed, done. And then it's like, oh, but how can we solve that? And then you get into the rabbit hole of regenerative farming. And I did all that, and we actually started then also applying it on our own farm in Belgium, which is now very successful, and it's gaining a lot of traction. But then what happened next is that I was traveling for almost like 2.5 years. And I said, I love this. Like, I love this lifestyle. I just have my laptop doing a few hours of work for a company in Germany, doing projects in Saudi Arabia. And I'm just traveling, surfing. But then what happened is I think Mother Nature had a kind of God or Mother Nature had a different plan for me. Because I went to the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador. One of the most beautiful experiences. I found like an indigenous guide who had worked with National Geographic. It took me like 24 hours to get where he was and was in the depth of the Amazon rainforest because I really wanted to experience that. And I loved it. Like we saw so many animals, like monkeys, dolphins, like it was so many diversity. Also trees that were bigger than high-rise buildings. I had never seen that in my life. I was like so impressed, and also understood like we need to protect this in some way. And then I had no clue what I was going to do next. I said, okay, I'll actually keep traveling from South America to Central America. Maybe I would have come earlier to Costa Rica. But I then got dengue fever. So you're probably familiar with the kind of malaria, but a different one. And I became really sick. And my whole life kind of collapsed because I was sick. My girlfriend dumped me. I had lost all my money because I was spending it all on traveling. And I had to move back in with my parents in Belgium. And I had this kind of, maybe some people can relate. You have like a difficult time in your life. They could call it a dark night of the soul. I'm very grateful for that experience because now I can say that then it was very hard. But when you're in those difficult moments, it's kind of like God is almost testing you like, hey, you have this good life, but here I'm going to make you a little bit more humble.
That's it.
And so that you can understand and ask yourself more important questions than just traveling and surfing. So I asked myself some deeper questions in those difficult moments, like, why am I here? What am I doing here? And I understood, like, I still believe until today that everyone has a purpose in this life. Mm-hmm. And you have to find it and fulfill it. Otherwise, you're going to have a miserable life or just an average life, which is also fine. But I decided I wanted to do something with my life. And so from that experience, I said, okay, what are the talents that I have and I can use and I can start having an impact? Because that was what I wanted to do. And it's garden design. So we founded my company about 5 years ago in Belgium with a partner. And we started just with simple garden design. And instead of just making gardens, we also included how to do it aesthetically, but also ecologically.
Right.
We did what people ask us. They want low maintenance
Wow.
gardens, and everyone thinks like, oh, it's impossible. If you want a beautiful garden, you have to work a lot in it.
Yeah.
If you want a beautiful garden, you definitely have to do something. But we started to apply all these regenerative methods, sustainable ecological methods that came from farming into the gardens, and we saw insane results. Like
Yeah.
created a garden, and the maintenance dropped by like 80%. And before it was just weeds and
Yeah.
invasives. The client could not handle it. We changed it, improved the soil, did all the good stuff. And then we was like, oh, this is something. So we always combine in our projects up until today. Is like, okay, how can we do better in terms of what the client wants,
Yeah.
making it more aesthetic, but also bringing in all the sustainable ecological aspects.
Yeah.
Not because it's a noble thing to do, but because we get better results. And it's still like in my egoistic mission, I want to regenerate, but
Uh-huh.
when my clients usually don't care that much about it. I was for a while very frustrated about it, like why they don't understand. I was trying to sell this, they should understand the soil and this and that. But now, actually, more recently, I came to the conclusion like it doesn't matter. Like I should just sell them what they want, which is a beautiful, lush property. Could be a small backyard, like we're doing a whole range of projects.
Yeah.
And then kind of like the engineering is we work with nature more than anything.
Wow.
That's in a nutshell what the happiness and the lows you get all
Right.
at once.
It's really interesting. I would like to follow up on a lot of things that you mentioned, just trying to process them in my mind. You know, it's a whole lot of, we get on the show a lot, how people choose their career path, how people navigate the path that they're going to. And there's a lot of things in our lives that sort of shapes us. And it's parenting, where we grew up. Just recently, I had a show with a lady who grew up in 8 countries, even before she was like, 10 or so. You can imagine, she speaks 9 languages. It's just a lot of things about our childhood that sort of molds us. And in the different stages of life that we go, it just happens that we drop some of these things, or we take them along depending on how life exposes us. And based on the things that you mentioned, I realized that, of course, family exposed you to gardening and how plants grow, and your own personal, how God made you, also brings you interest in finding out how things work. Now you followed that and went to another journey of working, and you didn't like the environment of how you work from 9 to 5 and all those conditions. Though it was a great experience for you, now you wanted more to explore the world. You go through all that, and then you hit one wall, and then now you're like, okay, I need to sit down and think, what's actually the thing from all the experiences of traveling? What can I do now? I just want to understand from that moment of when you got sick to you starting a company. What was that thinking process? We have a lot of young people who listen to the show. They want to understand how they navigate the path. Someone studied chemical engineering, someone studied sociology, psychology, whatever. How do I take what I have and then connect it to where I want to be? Because you've seen a lot of success starting your company for about 5-6 years now. But how did you navigate that bridge from that experience to starting a company? Why didn't you go and work with another company that had a similar vision? What came to your mind? What was that transition like?
That's a brilliant question, because I feel that many people, younger people, might be stuck in their life and are in that difficult situation. Definitely the younger generation with COVID, and they had to go through a lot of tough things.
Yep.
If you imagine being a youngster going through COVID, that must have been horrible. So that adds up to it. But for me personally, and I hope this helps somewhat, is like I was really like in a really difficult situation, both physically and mentally. And I just made a decision, like I want to get out of this, because it's like I can stay in this pity club or be like, my life is bad. And so I started looking for some solutions and answers. And I think the single best thing that I decided to do is to hire a coach. I found someone on Instagram, and he was posting, talking about things like how to find your purpose and all this stuff.
Interesting.
And I really connected with that. And funny enough, I was his first client.
No
and he was
way.
also just like starting out his business. And so it was also very affordable to work with him.
I see.
For a year or so, we had quite intensive calls. He taught me how to meditate and give me all these tools and tricks and things to calm your nervous system, get to know yourself, find alignment. And that's what I did. And I did the work to, let's say, clean up the mind, because our mind is an interesting tool that we have.
100%.
But I'm also learning more and more that we are not the mind. If you identify with the mind as being part of who you are, then you're constantly going to be overthinking and this doesn't work. And so you have to become the master of your own mind, which is weird because you're using your brain to become the master of it. But
wow.
yeah, we could definitely talk more about that. But even today, it's not like I figured it out. I always have moments of doubt and things. It's a journey. But now the cool thing is I have a toolbox of, if something's off, I can go, oh, maybe I should meditate more, or I have to look at my diet or my sleep. And so I think looking back now, it's like when you you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
As like, do you want to stay in the pity club or in pity land, or do you want to move on to and make the bridge, and maybe have to get a boat and get the resources and whatever, and go to opportunity land and where your life changes around. You got to make that choice yourself, because the moment you make that decision, things will start showing up. God sends you someone, maybe you work with a coach or a friend helps you out, or just to get going. And then important is also to look at the fundamentals. Like, people oftentimes they want to go super fast. Now I want the Ferrari and this.
That's
it. If that's your vision, go get it, do it. Because if you want to get a Ferrari, the person you'll have to become to get that Ferrari is going to be more valuable than the Ferrari.
Yeah.
You can throw away the Ferrari after you
get it.
Because it's not the value, it's the person you have to become to be able to serve that many people and get paid for it.
Yeah.
So I think going back to the basics is, first of all, check in with your sleep. Like, the very bad, if you're feeling off, that's what I do. Are you sleeping like 8 hours? Do you have a regular sleep pattern? Or try and fix that. Get up at a certain time, build some discipline around that. Second is your food. Check in, like, what are you feeding your body? Because that's like who you are, is the food that you put in your body. So that's where we can say, go to a regenerative farm, buy local food. I believe even if you do the effort to reach out to the people and buy from the local farmers with super nutritious food, it doesn't have to be more expensive, because you don't actually have to eat as much. You could argue with, no, fast food is pretty expensive too. But anyways, like, food is important. And then thirdly, only then you should start thinking about exercise. Like, obviously for walks or whatever, but fix your sleep and your diet first, and then exercise. Do something that you like. Or I think for me, I started doing strength training on a regular basis. Going to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I hate the surrounding of a gym. But I go because I sit on a desk a lot. Yeah. I do it as soon as possible in the morning. It actually gives me a lot of energy. So now I'm also transitioning, because I love running and I surf and have a bunch of sport activities that I love doing, and that really fuels me up to be at my best. And only then you can start thinking of like doing some prayer or mindfulness or meditation or any of those things. Nice. But I think when you're really in a deep place, get help, ask a friend, reach out, connect with someone on Instagram who's a professional in that, and don't just pick anyone. Do a bit of research about the person. If they're like, I'm gonna help you how to get a Ferrari and this and that, all the flashy stuff, like, be aware of that, because that might not work. I hope it works if you try it, but find someone that can actually help you and who has a track record of it. It's or if you can't afford it, just ask a friend. There's so many people. If you're going through a hard time, many people want to help you, and then you get that initial momentum going, and then from there it's easier. And from there it's not easy, because you still have ups and downs, and of course it's also a roller coaster, especially if you decide to start your own business like you do. And that's the real roller coaster.
It's a journey. But I think that the essence of what you're talking about is basically, we invest in ourselves to understand yourself, And throughout that journey, there's a lot of things that goes through your mind mentally. And then you also trying to take control of everything from a very high level. And the reason why I find that really interesting is we live in a world where now everything is more like a fast pace, like everything has to go back to back. And so young people are super pressured to go through that kind of fast pace to a certain age. I was listening to a podcast recently that was saying, what are the basic things that you should achieve by 30? And I think it's a great conversation, but it's also not a super wise question because exactly.
You don't have to accomplish anything by 30.
Exactly.
You have to try out a bunch of things, fail.
Exactly. And to everyone. So I think it's really profound. Very good advice for people to really sit down and think through and see, understand yourself, get to invest in yourself, knowing your skills and how and everything that you've worked through in your life is contributing to it. So the more you get to understand, the more you also get a clear direction of where you're going to go.
If you want to make those changes in your life, rather than saying today I'm going to change everything and I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to start meditating, I'm going to eat well, sleep good, do everything, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to get completely overwhelmed. So more important than doing a big change is to be consistent with small changes.
That's it.
Then consistently add. And I've heard people telling me that before when I started out or when I was younger, and I thought, nah, that's bullshit. To just do everything, and it just doesn't work. And now I'm
That's it.
And I can say, like, if you want actual change in your life, you gotta be consistent. Even like with today, with this, we have this phone, which is a beautiful tool to do anything you want today. Like, actually, this tool is the thing that is making life, it's easier than ever in history to do good in business or in life because of this tool and many other tools. But it's also easier than ever to be distracted
100%.
with this beautiful tool.
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful with that. And when you're in that kind of like dopamine rush and you're constantly like, it's almost like you're addicted to using your phone, I think it's good to do a little practice that you can start today. Is take 5 minutes, and instead of being distracted by something, just sit down and either close your eyes or don't move your body for 5 minutes. And your mind is going to go, oh, check your messages, do this, do that, do this. And just calm your mind and be in control of and do that just 5 minutes. If it's too much, start with a minute and then keep doing more. And you'll see now when you take control of what you should be doing now, your actions are going to be different too, rather than getting distracted all the time.
This is interesting.
I'm learning that myself.
Yeah, literally, someone goes to travel around and comes back in like a month time, or let's say a week or 10 days.
Yeah.
The person comes back and you're like, hey, what did you do? The person was literally on the phone the whole trip. Like, we're so easily distracted these days, and distraction is definitely a hurdle for consistency, because you cannot create that pattern of doing things consistently if you are so distracted. Like, even just working, we cannot even do work straightforward for an hour. Check email a little bit, check this a little bit, do this, and this pops up, notification here and there. That's a very interesting. Someone listening to the show at this point, about almost 20 minutes into the show, you're wondering when are they when are they going to get into the nuts of it? This show, it's on sustainability goes beyond just not doing less harm. And I'm sure that everything else that we've been talking about, it's basically about the ecosystem, thinking about ourselves and stuff like that. But go into another direction. How then, we've talked a lot of, you've mentioned regenerative landscaping and stuff like that. Can you break it down? What is this in short terms? What is regenerative landscape architecture? When we go to your website, that's the first thing we see written. What's that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because, and I might change it actually, because it might confuse too many people, because for me, I know it, and even with my peers, it's like they understand it, but most people don't. Still, I'll explain it as good as I can. So nature is working in a certain way, and it has been working in a certain way for millions of years.
Yeah.
And this is like the force of nature. It's almost invisible, but it's always there. And so that means that if you make a piece of land bare, wherever you are in this planet, something will happen to that land in a certain specific way. And that's called succession.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you understand this basic way of how nature works, now you can use that knowledge to your advantage and use that inside your project to achieve all the goals that you want. Could be a lush garden, could be a productive farm, could be a development that is more valuable because it looks prettier. So that's in a nutshell what it does. And there's a few principles that apply to if we want to get more into the in the nuts and bolts of it. Would you like me to explain?
Why not? Let's do it.
Let's do it. So the first thing is, like, if you look, and a lot is about observing how nature works, because if you understand how nature works, you'll understand everything better. That's actually a quote from Einstein. And so the way it works is that if you leave your soil bare, a certain type of plants will come in. And this is not all climates in the world, but most, especially like where you are, Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Something will happen. And the tool that nature has to restore the soil, because for nature, when the soil is bare, that's a kind of alarming situation. Because the topsoil of the earth is like our own skin. So you gotta imagine, like, the planet has a topsoil and it's covered with plants, and it's like the skin. So if we open the skin, you imagine, now it's like a wound, and it could get infected, and so that's not a good thing. And so when you do that in your garden or your farm, it's the same thing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, because sometimes we have to make changes or we need to harvest. But just be aware of that is like not a really good situation, because also what nature then does to restore itself, because nature always wants to go to that succession of a prime forest.
That's it.
The first plants that it sends in are weeds. They're not actually weeds. Weeds is a nasty word for annual plants that are often very medicinal, that have strong power to restore the soil, that can have deep roots, they add nitrogen, they have a bunch of qualities to actually improve the health of the soil. We are constantly fighting with pulling out weeds, and then more weeds come. Like, even if you use chemicals to kill weeds, I can assure you weeds will keep coming back. Because it's nature's way of restoring itself. So when you understand this system, now we can be like, okay, if we, for example, do a new development and we have bare soil because we're building houses, we can use something which is called cover crops. And cover crops is commonly used in regenerative farming. Actually, plants that are all family of weeds, but they're not as aggressive as weeds. And they can add nitrogen, like there's nitrogen fixating plants, there's plants that add phosphorus, like all the good stuff that we want to have in the soil. Plants can bring that because it's freely available in the atmosphere. So if we use plants to put that in the soil, we don't even have to add as much compost or what most people do after, if they do a development, they bring in new soil that is healthier, but it's super expensive and it's not better. So we could start with planting some cover crops so the soil already starts to regenerate itself. That's one principle, because one of the principles of regenerative design is you keep the soil covered as much as possible. And you can do that in a variety of different ways. If it's on a bigger property, for example, a development, cover crops can be ideal, because you just have to seed it, plants cover everything. It also suppresses the weeds or removes the weeds. If it's on a smaller surface, maybe you want to have immediately putting plants in place, perennials, shrubs, whatever you want to create, even edible plants. Then another great technique to use is to add mulch. So instead of, you put your plants with the certain spacing that is like part of a planting plan, but then always when you're finished, you have all these gaps between the plants. And most people just put the plants, they wait, and then all kinds of weeds start growing in between, because now you understand that nature's way of restoring the soil is bringing in the weeds. So if you then, we're actually experimenting with planting the cover crops and putting the plants inside, because the cover crops will die and they actually create a type of mulch. But if you, that's kind of still early experiments, but getting great results. So what we mostly do for smaller scale projects is bring in mulch. So once we've finish planting or even before planting, we cover the soil with straw or whatever material you can find. Like we also have to understand in nature, if you have the natural succession, certain mulches will also appear naturally. And if you start in the early succession, you will have more things like straw and things that have a little bit more nitrogen inside of them. As you go further into a forest, it will actually be more wood. And so now you also have to understand that in soil, there's always a balance between nitrogen and carbon. Like nitrogen and carbon are the main components of a healthy soil. Yeah. And the way they are balanced, the actual ratio between them, defines what type of plants can grow well. Yeah. So for example, in the beginning, if you have a little bit more nitrogen than carbon in ratio, then you can grow better perennials, annuals, crops. Yeah. If you say I want to go more towards shrubs or trees or even a prime forest, you have to increase the carbon content of the soil. And so nature will do that on its own naturally, but it will take 200 years, 300, 400 years. In Costa Rica, it can be faster. 50 years, you already start seeing prime rainforest, or not prime, probably early stage rainforest. So in some climates, tropical, everything just moves faster. It can be faster. But in many cases, we don't want to wait that long, so we almost manipulate the way nature would work anyway, so we speed up certain processes so we can work with nature. That's like the first principle, is covering the soil as much as possible. Then second is also like soil biology is the key. If you want to create a farm, a garden, anything, when you're using chemicals, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, or I'm not here to judge anyone, just be aware when you do, you destroy the biology in the soil, because we have these tiny little microorganisms that are almost like the warriors of our planet. They are like, and there's so many of them. And the way they interact with plants is so beautiful, and they only started to understand this more recently in the last 5 years, I think, maybe 10 by now, is the symbiosis between microorganisms and plants. I'll try to keep it briefly, but the way plants and microorganisms work in symbiosis is that plants grow, they can harvest sunlight, and as they grow, they produce sugar in the form of glucoses. And what the microorganisms love, or what they need to survive, is sugar. And the plants know that. The other thing is what plants cannot absorb, or what is really hard for plants to absorb on their own, is nutrition, minerals, phosphorus, all the things that plants need to grow beautifully, to have flowers, to grow strong. Plants have a hard time getting that themselves. But the microorganisms can bring that. And so they do, like, it's like a massive stock exchange where the microorganisms come with the minerals or whatever the plant needs, and in exchange the plants give sugar and glucose to the microorganisms so that they can survive. And it's so ingenious that even a plant will need different types of nutrition or minerals throughout the year. For example, when the season starts, they need a lot of nitrogen, and this is more in temperate climates. And so the microorganisms comes with, in springtime, it would come with phosphorus. The plant will say, oh no, I'm not going to give you your treats, your glucose, because I want nitrogen. Go find me nitrogen. I don't want this now. Okay, and then it comes with it, they exchange. And then as the season continues, plants need to grow, they need phosphorus to flower or to make to produce their crops. Then they exchange the right thing. So and I'm trying to explain it like in a nutshell, but it's far more complex than that. And so it's a beautiful, like, ingenious system that works very well. But then if we, as a farmer, as a developer, if we destroy that system by turning around the soil too much, by using chemicals, by constantly interfering, then those microorganisms are going to die. Like a practice is actually really bad, because now they figured out that every millimeter of soil has different types of microorganisms depending on the amount of oxygen that is available. Like on the top layer you'll have more aerobic microorganisms. As you go down, you have more anaerobic. They don't need oxygen to survive. But then imagine if you're plowing, you just turn everything around. So the ones that are at the bottom and don't need air are now at the top, and the ones that need air are at the bottom. So they all die. Again, I'm not saying that plowing is something that we should completely stop doing in farming, because sometimes you have to do it, but heavily reducing that is already a massive solution. Same in gardening, like people think, oh, I have to turn the whole soil so it's nice and prepared. You're damaging kind of the ecosystem of the soil.
I'm eager to do a lot of follow-up, but I want to make sure that you finish talking about all the principles. You mentioned two principles, so I want you to finish that so that I can just jump on some of the things you're talking about. Really interesting.
No, I think that those are the main things, and there's sub-principles, and it all comes down to like even in my book 12 Universal Laws of Nature, I also talk about the law of vibration, is that plants vibrate at a certain frequency, and if a plant is unhealthy because the soil is not functioning as well and microorganisms are dying, the plant will be much weaker and the frequency will drop. And so when the frequency drops, it sends signals to the insects. So if you've seen insects, they have all these antennae. They can detect the frequency of plants.
Yeah.
So if they feel, oh, that plant is unhealthy, it's probably going to die, or it has some disease or something, let's just attack it now. Yeah, we'll eat it because it will die anyway. We're going to recycle the nutrients and use it for us. And that's how nature works. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, you can be against it. It's not going to help because it's always going to come back. So if you constantly spray chemicals on your plants to kill the bugs, you can do that. It's a short-term fix.
Yeah.
But know that those chemicals make the soil weaker, and then now you have weaker plants, and next year instead of 3 insects you'll have 100 because your plants are weaker. So all these quick fixes that we're using in gardening and farming and developing in general is working against nature. And we don't have to do that. We can work with nature to get what we want.
Yeah. There are so many different ways or so many different reasons why this conversation is super important. But before I forget, go through the show notes and you will find the 12 Universal Laws of Nature book that Matthieu wrote, and you find a link in the show notes. There are so many reasons why this conversation is super important. And when you were just talking, there were a lot of things that were just coming into my mind, because humans have the nature or the habit of doing something over the years, and now we realize that, oops, we made a super big mistake. And I see this running through several industries. And for example, if we go into land management, in my industry, what the idea of building cities was, get water out of the cities so that cities do not flood, right? Find a way, when it rains, water gets too much, let's just channel everything outside. Now we're getting to a point where water that is in the cities are just becoming too less against the demand. So we're like, oops, how do we get the water back into the cities so that we could make water available for people? And you made mention of the same things that we've been doing over and over that sort of affects the system. We need to clear land to build. We need to clear land to do so many things, urbanization and everything. But now it's very interesting to think about the fact that the vegetation cover is like the skin of the soil, of the land, of earth. So if you take it off, make sure that whatever you're putting on could be regenerative or could help it not harm it that much. But now if you think about it, where we have buildings, where we have development, where we have everything, it's probably not something that usually the earth wants. And so now we're also transitioning into the space where, let's have more green spaces in the environment. So we have nature-based solutions, whatever things that people are doing. And of course, that's where your work also comes in, regenerative landscaping and stuff like that. I just want to get your personal thought, because when you were introducing yourself earlier, you made mention about a lot of your clients. So maybe some suggestions that you might make, it's not super exciting to them, but at the end you have to satisfy the client. So I'm like, what is that thin line for you between you seeing and observing all the mistakes that we are making in landscaping and land management, and your work in terms of how you would have professionally, or from what you have experienced and from what you know, your knowledge about regenerative landscaping, how you would actually advise people. It's because you see, you want to solve them with recommendations that you think from your own expertise might be right, but then you have the challenge of what people are willing to do. So I'm just trying to ask you, what are the problems that you see with land management, and what are things that you are itching to solve? It's like your hands are tied.
Yeah, I love this question because I had a huge kind of breakthrough or an awareness. This is like very fresh. Is that first of all, I have to understand, and we as regenerative designers, even the regenerative industry, or anyone who's convinced of what they're doing is good for the planet, or that on the other side, clients, they don't necessarily care about that. And it's okay, because for example, if you're working with the developers, they have to not care about that. They have to care about the numbers, because if they don't care, then maybe they're going to lose money or go bankrupt. So their first interest is money, and we have to acknowledge that rather than saying, oh, they're just about the money and this and that. We have to meet them where they are. So now what I've figured out is that I have to come to clients with solutions that will excite them in their world. And then when we start to work together, I just do my magic, and maybe they don't even know or care that it's regenerative. Because I know that I can get better results than what people are doing conventionally.
I see you.
So I just, instead of trying to convince my client, hey, you should think about healthy soil and you should plant diversity and we have to think of the microorganisms. They're like, whatever, dude. Like, I don't care as long as it makes me more money or it's a safer investment or we don't have to irrigate as much. Like, you got to find and ask questions to your clients like, what are you worried about? Well, oh, we're building this development and we see that irrigation can be a big cost. Is there a way to reduce that? Yes, there is. Okay, tell me more. What else? Oh, the landscaping often is a high cost because we have 30% of the plants we put in die. Okay, good. What else? Tell me more. So understanding what their pain points is and then enrolling them into their dream, also understanding, okay, where do you want to go? I want to make a beautiful development
100%.
That has high returns. Okay, good, we can do that for you. Let's start working. And I never even said the word regeneration. And I will actually actively reduce the amount of where I say sustainable, ecological, all these buzzwords which are important and they matter. But when you talk to the people that are, for example, investors, they might be like, oh no, this is just like another green person. Yeah. And they put us in the fringes. So I'm actively going to stop using those words. Yeah. Because and I made a post about it on LinkedIn, is imagine that you want to go buy tickets for an airplane because you want to go from Costa Rica to, let's say, South Africa, and you go to this place where you can buy tickets. Let's say this is before internet or even on the internet. And as you ask the person like, hey, I would like to buy a ticket from Costa Rica to South Africa, they say, okay, great. Here's how the plane works. We have these engines and they work really well and they're very safe. When you're on board, you'll have a nice meal. You can sit down. They're like, dude, I just want to get on a plane and safely from A to B. And that's what most people, including myself, were doing to our clients, is explaining how the plane works, whereas they just want to get to their destination.
I see you. Yeah.
So that is, I think, a major breakthrough understanding that I had these days. We gotta kind of get out of the fringes and go into the mainstream because I know that these regenerative solutions, which I'm not abandoning because I'm delivering it it's almost like I'm secretly doing it. Because I know that the solutions that I can do is better than the conventional. So we got to do it that way. Meet the people where they are. And then bring the value of your uniqueness after they've signed up. And if your client is, oh, wow, the results is amazing. And how did you do this? We've been working with conventional people for 20 years and we never had such good result, then you can start to explain your ideology or your systems if they're interested.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big awareness.
I've actually had that kind of analogy for a while. I always say, even in climate resilience and building mitigation methods and all that, it's really meeting people where they are. Imagine you go to a slum, a very poor area, and you're telling them about climate change. All they want is, hey, we're just trying to get a 2 square meal.
Exactly.
We just want 2 meals a day. That's all we need.
Yeah.
So it's basically like trying to meet people where they are. Climate change or climate variation affects probably everyone, but in a different language expression. And that's how you get to meet people. And so if you're working with certain stakeholders and you're only interested in, hey, regenerative, whatever, and you lose them 100%. So I really love that approach.
I just want to add in, even giving that example where people would live in slums and the main thing they care about is having a meal every day.
Yeah.
And your goal is we want to do something ecological, sustainable.
Yeah.
No, meet them where they are and set up community gardens and do it in a regenerative way and show them how they can be more productive. And now you have 2 things in one. You help the people's their problem of having adequate food with community gardens, and you doing it ecologically, regeneratively.
100%.
So you can do it.
Yeah. And in that case, you clearly have the attention. Number one, if you are not able to get the attention, then you already lost them. I mean, you've already spoken about, when you were talking about the principles in regenerative landscaping, you made mention about some of the things that we do that sort of impact soil structure and microorganisms and all the things that you're talking about, plants, microbial symbiosis and stuff like that. I think they're super interesting. I know you have, maybe let's put projects into 2 categories. We have projects that are already existing, and now you probably have to put in some spice on them. And then there are other projects that sort of you build from scratch. I want us to talk about already existing projects and talk about urban regions, systems that we see right now. What would a typical regenerative or, let's say, ecological succession look like in a typical urban region? What are some of the steps that you think about when maybe clients come to you or people are even thinking of building, restoring a certain piece of land? How does that thinking process go, and how realistic does that look?
Oh yeah. So the way that works is I will always have a client or user first approach, understanding what do they want. Is it food? Is it some food sovereignty, or they want to be completely off the grid and grow their own food, or they want to grow food and sell it, really understanding where are we heading. And maybe in some cases it's in an urban area, it's just about we just want a low maintenance garden that looks nice and gives us a better curb appeal. Okay, great, now we understand where we want to go, and then based on that we will design the garden or the property in such a way where we will include plants that it's not so much even about what plants we choose. It's really important because you have to think of the soil, the sunlight, there's many factors that play how you decide, but then also the composition of how you combine plants.
That's it.
Even in that situation we will always imitate how nature works, and the best way to do that is if you look at the edge of a forest. In general, if you want to learn a lot about nature, you got to go to the edges, like the edge of a pond. This is one of the permaculture principles, is like a lot of things happen on edges between a forest and a field. And the edge of a forest works very well because also depending if it's south faced or east or north, it will have a specific variety of plants that go from low covering plants to somewhat medium sized perennials to some higher perennials to low shrubs, some bigger shrubs, trees. And so this is like how a succession looks, and we can choose different chunks of that succession and install that in that specific place. So that's what we often do. If you want to create a low maintenance garden, even a house, for example, it's planted in the middle, it's kind of like a forest edge because it creates certain type of shade around the building. So if it's full shade, we can put shrubs that can grow in that conditions, and we can make like a forest edge garden even.
That's it.
So that's really how we do it, and we can get beautiful results, that what people want, with diverse plants, with beautiful this and that, but done in such a way that it's as much related to nature as possible.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a full imitation, because if you just fully imitate nature, it might be a little bit boring. It depends on who you talk to or where you are in the world. Like Costa Rica, you have so much abundance in nature already, but in more temperate climates, you handpick the specific plants so you have more abundance.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing. They found research that actually the most biodiverse places on the planet are either national parks that have an ecosystem that functions well, or the suburbs of cities where people are growing their own plants, and someone has a shrub from that country and not even native. It's just a bold mix of everything, and that's what nature likes. So there you find lots of bees and birds. So that's, the more we can do that in a garden. Also, one of the principles is that what we do is we want to, it's a little bit contradictory in terms of thinking, but in order to reduce the amount of pests that you have in your garden, like insects, you got to increase the biodiversity. So it's what I want, less insects in my garden, and you're telling me I should increase the amount of animals that I attract. Yeah, because when you attract more, like what we often do, we put a lot of bird houses in gardens. And that attract obviously birds, and the birds eat the insects. Or we create a space where ladybugs can survive. Like, I'm talking temperate climate. But there's similar insects all over the world. We attract ladybugs not only because they're very beautiful, but because they eat aphids. So if you have a garden, you probably will have some aphid problems, but if you have ladybugs, you can kill the aphids. And you create an ecosystem. That's what we're essentially
for them to thrive. It's interesting. Really, thanks for sharing this thinking process. I think it helps people listening to the show to really understand and embrace what goes through the thinking process. And probably, maybe you are even someone who is probably thinking of diving into that space. It helps your thinking process. I'm going to get into trouble. And the thing is, we have been told that tree planting is good. I personally I struggle with this a lot. I'm trying to understand the reason why we have just all jumped on the fact that tree planting is the way that we're just going to save the world. And I know that it's great. I understand the mentality behind this, but I think that there is more to it that we need to understand. That's another side of the story, is how we are offsetting carbon at one part of the world with someone who is restoring the land, probably growing plants, on another side of the world. I want to have a decent conversation with you around, what do you think about this? Is tree planting, what should we know about tree planting that we are probably doing wrong? That's number one. And about carbon credits. What are the gaps in this industry that we also need to understand?
No, I love this question, even if it's a really tough one, because the whole carbon credit paradigm, there's a lot of reasons to do carbon credits, but there's also a lot of reasons not to do it, because I'm not an expert in the carbon credits, but I can talk more about carbon, and it's almost like we're demonizing something that is also essential of our existence. Like, carbon is not like a bad thing. If it's like we want to stop carbon emissions and all that, it's true, because we have too much in the atmosphere. But rather than thinking how can we reduce the amount of carbon that we emit, how can we put more in the soil, because the soil has the capacity to absorb a lot of carbon. And then the logical thing is like, if that's the case, let's plant more trees, because trees do photosynthesis and they can absorb carbon. That's like the logical way of thinking. And it's not necessarily the best, because you got to think like all these places in the world that have been deforested and that have been used for farming. If we want to reforest that, it's like we're going from ground zero, which I explained to you is just the bare soil, and you want to jump to a full forest. And I explained to you that there's a whole succession. that takes 200 years to reach that. And I'm not saying we have to wait 300 years to plant trees or 200 years. We can speed up that process, but let's also be realistic. Like, we need the land that is available for farming. We need it for food production. Maybe we can over time reduce it as we get more efficient, as we maybe eat less animal products. Like, I think it could be part of the solution. But then we also have to look at the evidence. Like, what is the way that you can put the most amount of carbon into the soil in the fastest way? It's not trees. Trees can do that, but only when they are at that prime stage. Point. And so you're putting trees in the soil, and then you wait before they actually start acting as like a prime carbon sequestering tool. It's going to take 200 years. Yeah. And in many cases they die because the soil is not prepared for trees to grow. So rather than trying to go there, let's focus on the succession. Let's grow crops on the farms that can sequester carbon, and use, for example, cover crops in between the crops. Yeah. Because they put a lot of carbon in the soil. Let's look at grazing with animals. Like, the cows have been also demonized as the methane farters, and they emit methane into the atmosphere. And it's true, but what we forget is that methane is a cycle, just like carbon is a cycle. So even if you put cows, the thing is, if you put cows in a feedlot and you feed them with soybeans and corn that are heavily industrialized, then the methane thing is true, because there's no cycle as much. The waste of the cows, the manure runs into the rivers and it's gone, and that gives the emissions too. But if you look at what cows are really made for, and this is again like thinking how nature works, cows are grazing animals. That's their main function, is to go out on the prairies and eat grass, things that we cannot eat, and then make manure, and that goes into the soil in the grasslands, and that creates a lot more carbon in the soil. So now science is proving that if you do grazing in a regenerative way or a holistic way, which is mimicking how cows move over pastures, and a lot of farmers are jumping on that because it's also more productive, that actually sequesters a whole lot of carbon. And also being like understanding your location. Like, if you in Costa Rica chopped down a lot of their prime rainforest in this, I think 40s, 50s, because they wanted to do cow grazing. And then there's a whole story why Costa Rica was stopped exporting beef to the US. Not gonna go into there, but they made a choice. Oh, we don't need to produce as much beef. Let's replant the rainforest, and that worked out quite well because you're in a tropical environment where succession goes much faster. So it's really like depending on where you are in the world that you have to look at it in such a way.
Interesting.
I think.
Yeah. I really love the thoughts that you shared. I think it helps us to really rethink exactly what it is that we have to. And I think that maybe, I don't know whether it's science or whichever stakeholders that can really make that impact should improve like education and in-depth research on these things. Because I think it's about time that humans invest a little bit more into education than rather just going around doing things for several years and now realizing that, oops, this what we're doing was not right, and we now have to come back to it and understand. I mean, in the work that you do, there is probably a lot of stakeholders that are involved. I just want you to share a few thoughts with us in terms of policymakers, landowners, municipalities, all these stakeholders. How can they all sit at a table with you and gain an understanding on what regenerative landscaping is, and what can they all do in their capacity to make your work flourish? And it's not to say that everyone should come and support your work that you do, of course, which is great, but but I think the idea here is just basically trying to see how can regenerative landscaping flourish. So what can be done in terms of policy? So think about it. You are on a table with different stakeholders. How can they make regenerative landscaping flourish?
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I actually just interviewed Bill Reed from Regenesis on my podcast.
Oh, great.
almost the godfather of regeneration, or one of the founding fathers, you could call them, of the regenerative work. They've been doing it for almost 40 years, 30, 40 years. And so again, going back to like what I talked about, how you approach your clients, and if you have a more complex project with different types of stakeholders, is really sitting down with them and listening. Like, what do you want? Where do you want to go? What's your vision? Like with the municipalities, like maybe we listen to them and they say, oh, we want more green, or we want lower maintenance public spaces, or we want more this and that. And then you go with the landowners and the investors and the developers. It's okay, what are your needs? Okay, the developer, he wants to build and wants to make money. The investor wants to get a return on his investment. The landowner probably also wants something similar to the investor. And understanding what their different needs are. And maybe for the investor, it's not so much about the money, it's about the legacy. They say, oh, I have all the money in the world, I just want to, instead of building something that will fall down 20, 30, 40 years, I want to build something that will last. So you really got to understand what each and every stakeholder wants, then seeing if we can actually bring all those needs and wants together in alignment, and without trying to compromise, because far too often we are like, oh, the municipality wants this and we want the opposite, let's fight about it, and then we're going to meet in the middle, and that's it. The municipality wants 10, let's meet in the middle, and and now we build. That's kind of how most work works. That's what I'm starting to learn from Bill, and he explains it really beautifully in my podcast, is that you got to transcend that and understand, like, okay, what is everyone's needs, and is there a way we can get everyone on board and get everyone super excited, so that we can get way more than what everyone expected. And that's through regeneration in a way, because nature also works like that. Nature is the only kind of thing that thinks in abundance. It produces. So we can learn again from nature and how to structure businesses, how to structure deals, how to work on developments. So really merging everything together.
Wow.
And it's still for me like a learning process, because most of the work I've done so far is I have one decision maker, a private landowner, like in Costa Rica. There's an architect who is a partner in the project, and there's the landowner, and the owner says, I want to make an amazing regenerative beautiful farm, and we want to make the best steak in Costa Rica. It's easy to say, okay, let's start and let's build it. When there's more stakeholders involved, it can get more complex. So I'm still in the early stages of learning that. What's your perspective on working with different stakeholders? And
I think it's very similar to what you were talking about. It's basically like just trying to understand where they are, their needs, and of course, who is paying. I think all those things. Unfortunately, money always becomes a very interesting part of this conversation. And as a water engineer, that is always the thing. But I think that one of the things that you mentioned earlier that sort of becomes really important in my conversations my industry, it's not so attractive to stakeholders. So different stakeholders have different kind of feeling about it, that everyone wants water in their home, but no one cares about the water that is going out and where it's going, right? So it's more who should care about the water that is coming out from people's homes and industries and stuff like that. I think the municipality should care. The municipality cares, but they don't have enough money to control that. How then should we make them care? It's money. How can we reduce that cost for them? It's still money. And then again, if we reduce that cost for them, what are the benefits? Because they now think about it. If the benefits are A, B, C, D, do the people care about that? How does the return on investment, and it's not just financially, how is the return on investment in terms of benefits affects the community and stuff like that? So it all goes back up again to the government. What policies are there? What is the government's interest? What are even the challenges? Because if I'm having conversations in maybe Canada, there's too much water, right? But unless you go into a province where the government is like, hey, I personally care about water. It's in my manifesto. I want the people to care about water. But if you go to a place like Israel, or you go to a place like Singapore, Mexico, California. Like water is a big issue already. So we are already talking about that. So the government interest is there. So now I think more about how I can convince them to make policies that will make my work easy. So it all goes back down to meeting the people where they are. But I think because of financial conversation and people always thinking about benefits and stuff like that, you need to try and educate them a little bit, and now try them how to get value for their money, because money is what rules over everything. Yeah, I hope that answers you. It's been a super interesting, definitely learned a lot through this journey of getting to know more about your work, and I'm sure you guys also learned a lot of things. Sustainability has become such a buzzword that everyone knows from different perspective. But before I let you go, what does sustainability mean to you?
If we look at the word sustainable, it means to sustain is actually to just break even, is what sustaining is. It's not growing, it's not going backwards. And so I believe sustainability is actually impossible. You cannot be like, it's like if you look in nature, either plants grow or they die.
Yeah.
So focusing on sustainability it became almost meaningless to me now. And also many people are starting to realize that for different reasons, because they're like, oh, another sustainable, he wants to save the world. And they have their interests, so they don't care. So I started to understand that sustainability is also not enough, because the whole sustainable paradigm also focuses on doing less harm. And that's what the topic of our podcast was about, is like, just doing less harm is not going to solve the big issues that we have on a global scale.
That's it. Yeah.
It's just going to make them less worse. So that's kind of a bad deal.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you have a goal for life and you say, oh, I want to be less poor or something. You'll still be poor, so it's not good to focus on that. And that's where I've discovered the regenerative world, where it's, in regeneration we don't focus on doing less harm, we actually focus on turning everything around in a good way and finding solutions that actually make a big impact.
Interesting.
And reverse whatever damage has been done.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do with regenerative farming, for example, the carbon sequestration aspects of it, same with development.
I like that. In your line of work, if you're supposed to have a superpower, today that you can change something that like bothers you so much, what would that superpower be, and what would you change?
I think it's the superpower, and some people may hate me for that, but I'm going to explain it. It's the superpower of being a salesman.
Okay.
Like the word, if we go back in history, in the 60s, if you were a salesperson, you were like on the level of an engineer, a doctor. This was like, oh, you're a salesman. Wow. That was a job that was deeply respected. Because the salespeople are actually the people that can make change happen. They're like, when a sale happens, boom, something changes, some action happens. But then since the 60s, sales has become something really bad, because people start selling things that people don't need. Everyone, like, you step outside your house, someone wants to sell you something, or you like, this whole way how sales has become something negative, and people,
that's interesting.
They want to sell me something, they want hands in my pockets. So I think the word sales has become so negative. But if you really want to change the world, then you have to know how to sell. Like you can, unless you go into politics, which even that clearly hasn't worked for the last 60 years. Not much has happened with politics in terms of making the world better. So maybe you can become the president of the US or whatever big country and make intrinsic change. I think people who pursue that, they should do it. If you believe in something, it can be done through politics. But on the other side, it's the economics. That's actually the businessmen, the people like you and me, they are going out there and making agreements with clients. That's what really changes. So if I had the superpower to reinstall a kind of love for sales. And when I talk about sales, it's not actually about the money. It's about enrolling people into their dream, into what they want, into really making a difference in the world. So it sounds a bit contradictory, but if you just think about it, what has changed the world in the last 200 years?
That's interesting.
It's mostly sales.
Have had a lot of issues with this, but I haven't thought about it this way, because I have been talking about when this whole climate conversation comes in, they are talking about industry players and then consumers. Well, I think that all industry players are consumers at some point of any conversation. Can be producing something, but they also buy things in their homes. So it just doesn't make sense. Anyways, my point is that we blame producers and now we blame consumers. That conversation keeps happening everywhere. But my point is that who is in the middle of all these things? It's advertisement, sales, marketing, and all these things. Marketers have and salesmen have a strategy. They have conversations with industrial players. And that is all the things that are bringing overconsumption and all these things into the conversation. I wish you brought this up early in the conversation because we are already ending the conversation. But it's really,
I want to add,
really interesting how all these things unfold, because now I'm not sure who to blame in that conversation if industrial players hire specialized people to market to attract the taste of people. Why would someone have clothes that they don't even need, keep buying and buying? Like, we have grown into the habit of, I know there are people in this world who literally change their phones every year. They change their cars every 2 years, or they change certain things every year. And it's all not just because they just love to buy or they have the money to buy, but it's also because of sales and marketing. And also, of course, the production is going on. So the demand is there, so the supply is always coming. But sometimes the supply also keeps coming to push demand. So who is at the middle is this sales thing that you're talking about. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And imagine all those skillful people that know how to market, how to brand. Imagine that all these people from what they are doing today, and often they are very miserable because they sell something that people don't need and they know that it's not doing a good thing to them. Imagine them moving into regenerative work or landscaping or water resource management. If we could use their skills and how to convince a municipality to make the right investments because they're good at it, boom, now we're changing the world. So we shouldn't blame anyone, in my opinion. We just need to provide solutions and use the skills that are available for the benefit of whatever we want to achieve.
Wow. Exciting. I have enjoyed the conversation. If you made it to the last minute of this conversation, thank you so much, and happy to hear your thoughts on how the conversation has enriched you or challenged your thinking process. And thank you, Matthieu, for making time for the show. Is there anything else that we didn't unfold that you'd like to touch on? I
really enjoyed it. I think if people want to learn more, they can Google my name and they'll find my personal website. Also, I think you should subscribe and follow more of David's work. He's very exciting what he's doing, and I'm happy.
Thank you so much. Oh, so everything that he mentioned down in the show notes, you can find it. So follow his work, get on board with him, and we're going to find out how you can reach out to him and contact him for work. All right. That's about it. This show, we drop the mic here. Thanks so much for making time. Cheers.